Hi, everyone. This is Kim Owen from Grantwood AEA. I'm sorry I'm not able to join you today at your IDS meeting, but Carla and Melissa will be leading you through a little bit of information as we transition to some new tools and processes through the TLSS this year. And hopefully in the future, I'll be able to join you in person. Let's go ahead and get started by having you take a couple of minutes to consider these following prompts. And if you open up your packet to page 1, you'll see those there. But let's start individually. And so if you would go ahead and I will have Melissa and Carla set the timer for 3 minutes and give you some individual time to complete this packet page. Now that you've had a chance to really think about the impact on student learning that your work has already, and as you look forward to this next year together with the teachers in your building, we want to give you the opportunity now to talk to a table partner. So find another elbow partner or someone at your table. And we'll give you each 3 minutes, so 6 minutes total, to share your responses to at least one of these two questions. What conditions support student learning? Or how might your work as an instructional leader impact student learning? So I'll let Carla and or Melissa set their timer for 6 minutes and let you have a conversation. Thank you for jumpstarting the conversation with your elbow partner about the really important work that we're all here for, and that is impacting our students' learning in the classrooms with each of our teachers in our building. So now let's take a few minutes to go ahead and debrief by sharing out a few of those ideas from each of the tables. So Carla or Melissa has a chart at the top at the front of the room, and they will collect some of your responses to either one condition that supports student learning or how your work as an instructional leader or an IDS might impact student learning this year. So let's take about 4 or 5 minutes to share out a few volunteer examples, and then we'll move forward. So many of you have been engaged in learning through the New Teacher Center for multiple years in your role, and some of you, this is kind of your first level of engagement around some of the New Teacher Center work that we've been engaged in here at Grantwood AEA and through the Cedar Rapids School District. But just to give you a quick overview, the New Teacher Center's mission is to improve student learning by accelerating the effectiveness of new teachers, experienced teachers, and school leaders. And we're very happy here at Grantwood AEA to be able to say that we are able to work with all three of those stakeholder groups this year. And that's one of the reasons I'm not able to be with you today, is that I'm actually with the principals today in Cedar Rapids, and we're going through some of the same learning as well. On packet page 2, you will see the New Teacher Center theory of change. And I'm not going to read this screen at you because you do have it in your packet page, but take just a minute to review these 5 different points that NTC has to their theory of action and either underline, circle, identify things that really resonate to you. So take just a minute to do that. As you can see, this is very much a systems approach, and this is why I think the work that I get to do in Cedar Rapids and with all of you is so exciting to me, is that you are all focused on really having multiple stakeholders and multiple folks engaged around this learning and these supports for your teachers. So let's go ahead and give you a little bit of an overview of where we're going to be headed this afternoon. Here are a couple of the outcomes that we're going to be spending time together doing. We're going to spend about 2 hours together, and of course, it'll be not really face to face, but back and forth. So this is new for me. So thanks for listening in and stopping and starting the video so that you guys can really engage in the learning all together. So on packet page 3, you'll see these 2 outcomes. And I have to say, I'm extremely excited this year to be introducing the optimal learning environment framework, and we're going to take a look at that here in a few minutes. But it's very exciting to me because it has a lot to do with a lot of the research that's out there, not only about rigorous standards, but also the social emotional aspects of learning. And I had the opportunity earlier this spring and summer to share this with Carla and Melissa and other leaders in your district. And everyone's very excited about really aligning that OLE to the really incredible work that you're all engaged in around every learner future ready and your mission for your district. So we're really excited to kind of really launch that today and to share a little bit more and let you have some conversations around what that might look like in your district. The other piece that we're going to do is we're going to explore a new tool. It's called the Planning Conversation Guide tool. And it's the new iteration, which really incorporates a lot of the components of the OLE, and you'll get a chance to really see those in action here today, and take a look at the new tool. It will be in the Learning Zone, and the Learning Zone has been updated. I'm sure a lot of you in the room are shouting hooray for that. There are a lot of new features to Learning Zone that will make lives a lot easier for everyone that's really using those tools in that system. And so Carla and Melissa will get you into that also this afternoon so that you can actually play around with it a little bit. So here's our agenda for the 2 hours that we're all going to have together. We already did our connector around the impact on student learning, and I know many of you have see all kinds of connections with that and are very much focused on that. Once again, we're going to look at how we create optimal learning environments together, and then we're going to explore effective planning and really kind of introduce you and engage our conversations around that planning conversation guide and tool. And then we'll finish up with closure, and together you will be able to identify some next steps, either for yourself in your role and in your building, or collectively as a district moving forward to support all teachers as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into the creating optimal learning environments. For every learner to succeed, they must be immersed in an environment for learning that meets their needs. We'll be returning to this framework often this afternoon and also throughout the rest of the year, so that this is just really meant to be a brief introduction into what we're going to dive into deeper later. So as you take a look, and this should be the last packet page in your packet, I would believe it's page 30, it's after page 34. It's the very last one in your packet. This is the framework that the New Teacher Center has put together based on 20 years of experience in the field, and also through a lot of research that has been done recently to really take a look at 3 different domains. And so before we really dive into those domains, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and read the definition at the top of the Optimal Learning Environment Framework page. Once again, that's the last page in your packet. And as you're looking at that and reading through that, please highlight important words and phrases and or stars where something really resonates with you. So we're going to give you just a few minutes to do that. I'm sure there were quite a few things there that really resonated to you. I know when I did this recently with another group of instructional coaches, there was an awful lot of things that were highlighted and underlined in that definition. I'm assuming the same is true for your group. What we're going to do now is give each of you an opportunity to dive a little deeper into one of the 3 domains that you see on the screen. You'll notice that the first one is we're going to call domain 1, creating emotionally, intellectually, and physically safe environments. Domain 2 is providing equitable, culturally responsive, and rigorous curriculum and instruction. And then the third domain is meeting the needs of diverse learners. So what we'd like you to do is Carla and Melissa have already gone ahead and they will assign each table group to one of those three domains. So I'll let you guys go ahead and do that. So once again, you'd have tables 1, 2, and 3, and probably multiples of each of those different domains. So go ahead and identify which of those domains your table group will be working on. And as you do that, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. What we'd like you to do is to go ahead and briefly read those characteristics that are underneath your domain, and then make some connections to that domain by considering some of these bullet points with your table group. In other words, what we want you to do is to really think about what characteristics of each domain might look like or sound like in a classroom, and or any of these other things that come up in your conversation. So we're going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes with your table group to have that conversation, brief conversation around any of these areas related to your domain with your table partners. So Carla and Melissa, I'll let you go ahead and set the timer for about 4 minutes and allow the conversation. Okay, I'm sure those conversations were really lively, and I really wish I was there to hear more from what you're seeing. But we're going to go ahead and move right in now into an opportunity for you to watch a video of a classroom. And the idea would be that if you were domain number 1, we're going to ask your table group to selectively script what you see and hear in that classroom and that video based only on your domain. So one table group or a few table groups will be working only and kind of looking through that lens of domain number 1. Other table groups will be looking through the lens of domain 2, and then the remaining tables will be looking at the domain number 3 when they're selectively scripting. So before we move into that, just want to really quickly remind you of what evidence that you might collect in your selective scripting. And this is a slide that should be familiar to all of you. We had this in our first year of professional development together, and it's really talking about what is and isn't evidence that you would be able to capture. And ultimately, when we think about this, we want you to really focus on what we call low inference notes, which means you should really only be writing down what teachers and students' words and actions are, so that we can really capture that and have a conversation about that afterwards. Your selective scripting tools, we're going to use there's some in your packets. A little while later, we're going to get you into the learning zone, but for this activity, we're actually just going to keep you in the packet and let you write your notes for your conversations. So you should find selective scripting pages on page 4 and 5 in your packet materials. And so make sure that you have those ready. I don't know that you will actually need 2 sheets, but we put 2 in there just in case. And we're going to go ahead and get the video set up and allow you to be ready to take a few notes from the classroom here in just a minute. So here's what we're going to have you do. The classroom you're going to take a look at is Mr. Cologne's classroom. He is a 5th grade teacher, and this is a 5th grade math lesson. The focus is on equivalent fractions, and this classroom is in Brooklyn Public School 108. And so once again, you should be only really kind of recording evidence of the domain that you've been assigned, and you'll have a chance to write those down on packet pages 4 and 5.
One of the questions that I really wanted to ensure that I asked was the question about the subs. If each grouping of students received one less sub than there are people, are they truly getting an equal amount? And I really wanted to understand that because that's an easy pattern to see. 5 students, 4 sandwiches, 4 students, 3 sandwiches, then it must be equal. But if they really dive deeper into the problem and do either the division or do the common denominator strategy or any other strategy that they felt would help them at that moment and shared that strategy with another student, even if that student did another strategy, they'd be able to be successful in answering that question.
They're not receiving the same amount of stuff because since the denominators are different, there's different parts of a whole.
Ah, okay. So now I'm hearing a different strategy completely. We've been talking about division, and now we're seeing a direct correlation, a direct connection with a common denominator. Explain this a little bit more, Crystal, this common denominator, and how is it related to this division?
Since they all have different denominators, they have a different total, and if you find common denominators, then all of the total are gonna be the same, and then you're gonna see which one has more of the total or less than the total.
I think if you were to multiply them to find the common denominator, it'll be easier, and the denominator could be 40 if you wanted to compare them.
Okay, so now we have 2 different ways in comparing who got more or whether it was distributed equally. We have division, which was an operation we used, and we also used fractions with converting those denominators into like denominators. You have your hand up, Kayleigh?
For the second one, I got 8/10, and if you use a strategy that Crystal did, if you find an equivalent fractions for 4/5, if you multiply that times 2, it'll give you 8/10, and you can convert that into a decimal.
The goal is with the groupings, they're allowed to think about what they're doing with the help of a peer who may understand it slightly better or a peer who may not understand it slightly better.
What does a 60 represent? Is it minutes or seconds?
Seconds.
That it takes to make no. 60 seconds equals a minute. Equals a minute. So the numerator is gonna be
The seconds.
yeah. So it's seconds over the second that it equals to make 1 minute.
There was that I put 5, 6, and I used the rule 1 minute equals 60 seconds. Then I multiplied by 10, and I got 50 over 60, and I got my answer as 50 seconds.
Now I want to highlight 2 different strategies that were used here, okay, in order to obtain seconds. And this is where the conceptual knowledge of math really shines, okay, because a rule can only take you so far, okay, because what happens that day, you forget the rule. If you know how everything is connected, why it's connected, and what's related to each other, you can find ways of solving and persevering through that issue that you're having, that problem you're having, by finding a different route there. Math is all about different routes. Any route will get you there if it's a precise and correct route. Now over here, what I see is I saw division being taken to that correct route. Well, over here, what I saw was changing the denominator into what we know as the rules. As you grow older, the conceptual knowledge and the concepts that you're learning are just going to get more difficult. And that struggle really allows every person to know that there will be struggles and you need to persevere through them. You need to find a way, whether it's by yourself or whether it's with a partner. Either way, you're going to get to that output where you want to be.
Okay, so now you've had an opportunity to peek into Mr. Clone's classroom and look at the evidence through one of the lenses of the domain that your table group was assigned. Now we want to give you a little bit of a little bit of time to kind of talk at your table group related to your domain and what evidence that you collected as a group. And so if you turn to packet page 6, you and your table group will be spending the next 5 minutes kind of having a conversation about whether you were in domain 1, domain 2, or domain 3, and what evidence that you collected that you saw in Mr. Clone's classroom. And also consider those bottom 2 questions. What might this classroom look like if one of the domains was missing? And how did the 3 domains work together? So first, really kind of talk about the specific information or evidence that you collected as a group. But then go ahead and have a conversation a little bit about how maybe all three domains might work together, or as you're kind of glancing over some of those other domains, what other things might have popped out to you if you had had that second or third domain, depending on which group you had. And then in a few minutes, once your table group gets a chance to discuss this together, please identify someone to be a reporter, and then each of the three groups is going to get a chance to share out so everyone can kind of fill in the other two boxes, or at least take a few notes based on what other groups saw in the video. So Carla and Melissa will let you go ahead and set the timer for 5 minutes and allow each table group to talk about their evidence and discuss those two questions at the bottom of packet page 6. We now want to go ahead and allow you to extend the discussion that you just had to the idea of equity and the optimal learning environment. And we're going to invite you to consider how the OLE, or the optimal learning environment, provide entry points for you as an IDS to discuss equitable learning conditions with teachers. So at your tables, we have these prompts up on the screen. We want to give you about 3 or 4 more minutes to really kind of talk about any and all of these questions that resonate with you and your table mates about how you might actually be willing to kind of have those equity conversations, and how this tool and framework might be able to support you with that. So 3 more minutes to talk at your table groups. We're not going to take the time right now to share out those responses related to the equitable learning environments, but we know that those conversations are extremely important for all of us to be having on a regular basis. And so you'll get an opportunity to kind of extend that and talk in whole group at another time. But what we want you to do now is give you the opportunity to really stop and reflect individually about your own context, so your own building, the teachers that you'll be working with, so on and so forth. So if you turn to packet page 34, and I know it's really kind of odd, I will just share that we are kind of condensing this learning that's normally a 2-day learning session, and we're taking kind of a different chunk and chew with that. So packet page 34 is the second to last page in your packet. The numbers really don't matter, but you'll notice that it says packet page 34 at the bottom. And what we want you to do now is to really consider some of what we've already been through, the video, the framework around optimal learning environments, and the conversations that you've all had with each other, and really think about what kinds of things might I want to consider as I apply this to my own practice moving forward this year. So what kinds of things might you want to apply to your work with individuals and or teams of teachers, and or other things related to the optimal learning environment right now. So go ahead and take a few notes on packet page 34 related to that, and any action steps that you want to really capture at this point. So we're going to give you about 3 minutes individually to jot down a few notes, and then we're going to move on to the next piece. Okay, we're now going to jump right into exploring effective planning with one of our newest tools this year, and that is called the Planning Conversation Guide. And before we jump into that, we want to just kind of remind ourselves of the teaching and coaching cycles. Sometimes we call it the PTR, or the Plan, Teach, Reflect cycle. And it's kind of enhanced this year. You'll notice we're really focusing on making sure that everything that we do in our classrooms as teachers and as coaches supporting teachers are wrapped around this cycle. If you were in our training last year, we really highlighted the high leverage processes and tools around planning, around the observation cycle. So that would be the pre, the observation, and the post, and then also analyzing student learning. And those were what we consider our high leverage tools. What we know in practice makes the biggest impact and really helps teachers kind of focus their ongoing teaching around these processes and the tools that can support them. So our newest tools are really focused in on these three parts of this cycle, and also we're going to show you in a few minutes or have you have a conversation around how it's also tightly connected. The new tools are tightly connected to the optimal learning environment that we just spoke about. So what we want to do is also really kind of hone in on the planning part this time. The next time we're together, we'll really take a closer look at the observation tools that are available to you through Learning Zone, and also the new analyzing student learning tools as well. But today we're really going to focus in on the planning conversation guide. So the other thing that we really want to share with you is that all of NTC's new high leverage tools are organized by focus areas, and that are these focus areas you'll see on the screen here, and then you'll also see in your packet on page, actually the teaching and coaching cycle was on page 8, and on page 9 is a little bit of a descriptor related to these 4 focus areas if you want to go ahead and turn to packet page 9. But basically, these focus areas are going to be very parallel. So whether it's the planning conversation guide or the observation focus and cycle, or the analysis of student learning, you are going to very explicitly see these 4 focus areas very much highlighted in those new tools. And so we're going to take some time for you to kind of unpack that and take a look at how that is actually true. But these focus areas really encompass everything that happens in the classroom, including teacher and student words and actions that are observable. And so it's really important that we are helping all of our teachers and support all of our teachers in planning for all 4 of these areas. And the real this new tool is aligned with the optimal learning environment framework, but it can also, it's not as tightly connected to a specific lesson. I think that's one thing that you'll notice in the new tool. It's actually can be used in multiple ways. So it could be a way to analyze an existing lesson that a teacher has and actually enhance one or more of these focus areas that maybe you see some gaps in, or the teacher sees some gaps in and wants to really kind of beef that up. Or it could actually be, planning ahead for a specific lesson or group of lessons with an individual teacher. And actually, in a little bit, you'll see a video where the instructional coach is actually doing it with a group of teachers. And I think in your specific context, you have both of those things going on. So you'll see a lot of benefit from that as well. And so what we're going to have you go ahead and do is take a look. Actually, I'm going to back up just real quick here. Take a look at page 10, 11, and 12 in your packet, and you'll notice that is the actual tool. And you're going to get a chance to kind of analyze that now in a few minutes. But we have found that often it helps for us to, before we actually analyze the tool, to take a few minutes to really look at the overview and the steps in the process, because the tool is really there to help support the process. It's not intended to be a form that every box is necessarily filled out. So we think it's really important to kind of step back for a minute at the very beginning and really look at that overview and the steps that are involved. And so on packet page 13 and 14, you will see those there. And what we want to do is to go ahead and give you, 3 to 4 minutes here to really look at this. Actually, we'll say 4 minutes to read through the overview and the steps document, so that you can, this really replaces some of those field guides you've had in the past, I believe, some little small spiral bound notebooks that we've had. I will share with you right now, just kind of as a timeout, all of these resources and pieces are going to be now part of your Learning Zone. You'll have a tools section of Learning Zone, but then you'll also have a My Learning place where you can find all of these additional resources that are electronic versus hard copy. So I'll be sharing more with Carla and Melissa about where you can find all of those great resources, so that they can pass that on to you. But for now, you have what you need in the packet that you've been provided. So take 4 minutes just to kind of read through packet page 13 and 14, and then we'll have a chance then to use what you've learned from that to really unpack the tool. So if Carla and Melissa would like, you can go ahead and set the clock for 8 minutes. And that way, after they read packet page 13 and 14, the group can go ahead then and take a closer look at the tool. And I would say one of the things that I would encourage you all to do is to really take a look at how those 4 areas, the 4 focus areas, are arranged, and some of the questions that you'll notice in there. And in a few minutes, you're going to get a chance to actually map this back to the optimal learning environment as well. So about 8 minutes to read the planning conversation guide overview, steps, and kind of self-pace and or with a partner. Take a look at the planning conversation guide tool, identify things that really stand out to you that you want to try to incorporate into your practice this year. So about 8 minutes, and then we'll come back together, large group. So now that you've had an opportunity to really kind of take a closer look at the planning conversation guide tool that's in your packet, and also the steps and overview, go ahead and turn to an elbow partner and just have a quick conversation. You'll notice there's a note-taking page on page 15 in your packet around these 3 questions. How do you really see yourself using this tool with individual teachers and or teams of teachers? What entry points might you use to introduce this tool to your teaching colleagues? And how can you uncover your teachers' knowledge and beliefs about planning, and how this could actually enhance or support them in that part of a very important part of their work? So we're going to once again give you about 3 or 4 minutes here with your elbow partner to kind of talk about these questions and how you might apply and use this planning conversation tool in guide in your practice. What we'd like to do now is just take a brief moment as well to take you back to your optimal learning environment framework. And with that same partner that you just talked through the questions on packet page 15, we want to have you now go back to your optimal learning environment framework that was the last page in your packet. And one of you have that laying out while the other one has the actual planning conversation guide tool out, and take just 2 to 3 minutes to review those definitions, the domains, and the characteristics that you see listed under each of those 3 domains, and really look for places. Okay, now that we've had the opportunity to really dive in a little deeper into the planning conversation guide and the steps in the overview, we're going to also ask your team at your table to take a closer look at the connection between this tool and the optimal learning environment framework that we looked at earlier. And so across your table, make some decisions about the 4 focus areas. And so, in other words, at your table, you want to make sure that there's at least one person that is going to take a look at page 10, the first focus area being standards-based content. And then there should be another person at your table, at least one, who will take a closer look at the instructional practice focus area number 2 on page 11, and then someone else that would take focus area number 3, the student actions. And of course, the last but not least, at least one person at your table that would look at section 4, focus area number 4, classroom interactions. And what we're going to have you actually do is to take a few minutes to review that focus area, which you all kind of took a closer look at it a little while ago, so that shouldn't be hard. Really looking in at that focus area on that tool through the lens of the optimal learning environment. And so what we want you to do is look for evidence of how some of those indicators within the planning conversation guides support them. So in other words, are there some, and it looks like bold letters, or questions or specific things within your section that definitely connect and align with one of the three domains in the optimal learning environment. So each of the four people at your table, and of course, if you have more than four at your table, you can double up on some of these different focus areas, but take just a few minutes, I would say maybe 3 or 4 minutes, to make those connections. And as soon as you're done with that, Carla and Melissa will have you kind of put some time on the clock there for everybody to do that individually. And then as soon as you're done with that, we'll go ahead and put 8 minutes on the clock for each of the four areas to have a 2-minute share out from what they found within their section of the tool. So first, 3 or 4 minutes individually to kind of look for those connections between the planning conversation guide and the OLE, and then 8 minutes, 2 minutes for each of the four areas total to have that conversation around what you found and share out with your whole table. Okay, welcome back. So the last piece that we're going to do this afternoon is really kind of think about how might I use this planning conversation guide with teams. And so we're going to once again show you another video where you'll see a team of teachers working through this. And if you want to turn to packet page 16, I'll kind of direct you there first. You can see that there are various ways that coaches have used this tool with teams. So I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of look at that list there. There's a bulleted list under a use case, and then also some alternative processes. So as you can see from what's listed on packet page 16, there's not one right way to engage in conversations around this tool with a group of teachers. And so you really need to be thinking about what exactly would work well in my context, and it may look very different at different buildings, but we want to just open up the opportunity for you to see some possible ways that you could do that. So today we're going to watch a video, and you're going to get an opportunity then to kind of see this in action and have a short conversation after you watch the video. So you'll notice again on packet page 17 and 18, we've included a few more selective scripting tools for you. And that way you can kind of collect some evidence of what you see. And so what we really want to have you do as you think about this video and what lens you want to use, most of the time, we think about using this one-on-one. So really kind of be thinking about your context, what you see here, what language entry points did you see that the teacher or the coach used to facilitate the discussion. So really put yourself in kind of that fly on the wall and watching how the coach kind of navigates the conversation, collects some evidence of what the coach is saying, what the teachers are saying, the body language, some of the nonverbal cues that were evident. And how do you really see the teachers working well together to build a community of learners together through working through this process? And so as you're really kind of looking at this video, we want you to kind of be thinking about scripting some of the things that you see and some of the things that you hear either from the teachers or from the coach during this short video. The video is a little bit over 5 minutes long, so it's actually pretty short, and you don't get to, and they do edit out some pieces, so you're not going to see a lot, but hopefully you'll be able to draw some conclusions from this and some ideas for your own building. So notice just a couple of additional information that we want to share with you. It is a lesson on writing an opinion letter, and this is a group of kindergartners that are in this video, or I'm sorry, not kindergartners, but kindergarten teachers, and they're having their PLC meeting. They're analyzing a lesson from a scripted program that all teachers in the district use. And once again, it's an opinion letter about a celebration idea. And all teachers are required to implement it. And they know that they're coming into the conversation after the coach and the teachers have already discussed the standard and the task alignment. So just know that they've had part of that conversation already when the video begins. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the video here then.
I like to water the garden. It is fun.
By using the planning conversation guide tool, it allows us to take the scripted programs that we use for our ELA in kindergarten. It makes them dive deeper into those programs.
We start with the standards and we talk about what standards are we going to focus on and how are the lessons that we're working on in the next couple weeks coming to the standard. What kind of misconceptions are we having? Do we have any strategies that we use that are in place? And then we always talk about how are we going to come back when we're done with the lessons? What are we going to do next to make it better?
What are some of the skills that our students need to know in order to be able to do this particular lesson?
They need to know how to write a letter.
They need to be able to identify a topic.
Make illustrations that match what they wrote about.
I think that they also have to have the basic structure for writing sentences. So what should be capitalized, where periods should go.
They need to be able to sound out words and know where to reference in the word wall and what to look for in the classroom. And at this point, they already have the idea of how to choose their opinion when giving different options that they can use.
Does this lesson actually address the entire standard?
I would say this lesson not only meets the standard in its entirety, but it goes beyond the standard and starts going into first grade standards.
Because it's simply a writing lesson, it leaves out the drawing dictating piece,
Right.
which may need to be adapted for some students.
Tell me more about that. How can we make sure that our kids that need that drawing, that need that time, what can we do in our classrooms?
Well, I think as we model, it talks about modeling writing a letter. As we are modeling, not only model the writing portion, but also model what an illustration that matched the writing would look like.
And I think in the beginning of this lesson, it also working together as a class to generate a list of opinions can help students who are struggling with coming up with their own opinion.
Right. For example, it gives us the celebration ideas, and even though it shows us a model of what our list should look like, for those students that need it, you can dictate a small little picture to go with it. Like you can jot down a little picnic at the park pretty quickly just at the end of the sentence.
Based on the knowledge of our students, going back there, and we know that there are instructional practices that we already do. What support do you guys give in your lessons already for those students?
Like with some of my ESOL students or struggling writers, as I model it, I have them write it with me.
And I'm very big on making sure that the kids are becoming more self-sufficient when they write. So I do not spell words. I remind them of how we can sound out our words, say the sounds, and write it as you hear, with or without somebody else's help. And it's starting to really show in their writing because they're writing sentences independently.
I also remind students to write down the sounds that they hear, because not every student is going to have the same sounds depending on what their level of phonemic awareness is. And I remind them to reference the alphabet chart. So if they're having a trouble remembering which letter makes a certain sound, they have that chart to reference.
On top of that, for my ESOL students, I have a vocabulary wall that has pictures and the words on like a flip ring. And they're there under categories, transportation, people. And so when a student has a question, rather than interrupting another student who's working, they can just stand up, grab the card, flip through, find what they need, and then put it back when they're done.
Mm-hmm. So does it have a picture in the front and then the word in the
Yeah,
back?
it's on like the side of the
That's a good
storage
idea.
cart. It's really neat.
And then I also use the vocabulary wall for students who don't know their letters yet. They can look at the picture, they know that sound, and then they just write the letter down.
That's a really good idea because I have my one friend that she'll tell me what letter it is, but she can't write the letter. So I do have letter tiles. I should get those out.
For this particular lesson also, I think providing the students with a piece of paper that is set up for a letter would save time.
If you go into the Being a Reader, they have it. They have one that you can model, and they have a printout that you can use for the kids.
And Miss Gregory, like you were saying, sometimes I connect back to the visualizing lessons we've done when you have them close their eyes and think about their idea, and I may ask them to visualize. And then that helps them to share more.
I also noticed in a connection with the being a writer and the making meaning vocabulary that we use the prompts. My partner, Tiffany, said that, and then they would follow through. So it was neat to see the connection there too.
Now that we have an opportunity to discuss many different ways that we include turn and talk with our students, if you would just take a moment to go right back into our planning conversation tool and type in what you guys plan on doing with your own individual students. Okay, just to summarize where we are right now, we've talked about the alignment of our standard to our lessons. We also had a chance to talk about how to connect our students' prior knowledge of what you guys have already taught to our current lesson. What I would like for us to do is take a look at our lesson, thinking about your own students. What would you guys suggest? I'm wondering what our next step should be after teaching the opinion writing.
I personally would like to bring the letters back, if it's okay with everybody else, to analyze what the students are doing, and maybe if my class is having some issues or another class, talk about something that we did differently that could be done in a reteach.
Good idea.
Excellent. At least at that time we can discuss how, if there's different delivery of the lesson, that what they did, and then especially once we can see the analysis of their learning, maybe we can glean from each other what we did and how we actually taught the lessons.
I think bringing the writing together would also kind of give us an idea of building or developing some type of a rubric.
Okay, now that you've had a chance to watch the video of the instructional coach and the team of kindergarten teachers have that conversation, we want to go ahead and let your table group turn to page 19 in your participant packet, and you'll see these questions there. Go ahead and have a conversation, an open conversation with your table group about any and all of these questions that really kind of resonate to you. And then we'll give you about 5 minutes, and maybe Carla and Melissa will have to shorten that a little bit. They can let you know that, but have 4 or 5 minutes conversation with your table group, and then they'll go ahead and invite a few volunteers to share out at the end of that time. Okay, well, as we wind our time down together today, I want to thank you all again for your engagement and the great conversations that I know you all had around the optimal learning environment. And then, of course, the planning conversation guide and effective planning. And so once again, I'm just going to have you return to packet page 34, which is the second to last page in your packet. The numbers don't make any sense. I'll say that right off the bat. But the last time we used this application to practice page, you were really kind of jotting down some ideas and questions or things that you would transfer to your practice related to creating optimal learning environments. Now the second row down is entry points to effective planning. So we'll invite you now after this second learning piece related to that new tool, some things that you want to walk away with and capture those there on that row. And then once again, if there's an action step at the very bottom box that you want to remember or capture for yourself, please take a few minutes to do that. You'll notice that we're skipping 2 rows, and that's because those are some learning pieces that we'll come back to at a later time. So thank you again for your time. I'll let Carla and Melissa kind of decide how much time they want to give you to take a few minutes here to apply and take some individual notes. And then if you wanted to share out some ideas on next steps as a large group, that would be great as well. Until next time, thanks so much for letting me join you remotely. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in person. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us that might be able to support you with this, and have a great year.